Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of King Paramount's Canal Adventures. Today, on a rather gloomy winter's day, we are going to go and look at something which I find really quite interesting. We are at Cosgrove on the Grand Union Canal. Now, we've been here before in the episode called Aqueduct and Aquatales, and if you haven't seen that, you might like to go and have a look at it, because it is slightly relevant to what we are going to go and look at today. That episode was all about the building of the Iron Trunk Aqueduct and how it was originally dug as a series of 5 locks going down to the River Ouse, and then 5 locks coming back up again before they decided to put in a great big embankment and an aqueduct. This, you may remember, is the first of those 5 locks and the only surviving one. And what we're going to do is we're going to walk to the other end of the lock and have a quick look, because this is relevant to what we're looking at today, which is the Buckingham Arm. Now, the Buckingham Arm was approved by Parliament in 1793, and the original idea was, if you remember from the Aqueducts and Aquatales video, the locks disappeared off opposite me down there, down towards the River Ouse. They were going to canalise the River Ouse and take it all the way to Buckingham over quite a few miles and a series of 5 or 6 locks. In the end, because the aqueduct was built, they didn't do that. So in fact, they started the Buckingham Arm 50 feet higher, and here it is, and it wended its merry way to Buckingham via actually only 2 locks in the end, both quite near Buckingham. Now, in order to do this, they had to go back to Parliament, so there's a Second Act in 1794 authorising the building of this arm, which we are going to walk down today. Now, it's called the Buckingham Arm, but actually it was built as sort of 2 separate things. The first one was a broad canal, which we are on at the moment, going to Stony Stratford, and then it was built narrow from there on towards Buckingham. And one of the reasons for that was that there was a boat builder in Stony Stratford which built actually seagoing boats, which it towed down the high street with a steam tractor, put into the Stony Stratford part of the Buckingham Arm at Stony Stratford, and towed all the way down to London to be launched on the Thames. Nowadays, alas, the Buckingham Arm is a shadow of its former self. Oh, just going to stop to say, look at this rather nice little Micro Plus boat, rather splendid. Reminds me of cruising the Cuts, little yellow boat. Now then, nowadays the Buckingham Arm is rather sadly depleted, and the reason is because it was abandoned. It was abandoned in 1963 or 4, I think, but that is by no means the full story, or even part of the story. It opened in 1801 and operated perfectly successfully for about 100 years. But there were 2 problems with it. One, the silt from the River Ouse kept on getting into it and clogging it up. And 2, the Buckingham Town Corporation kept on dumping their sewage in it, completely illegally. Eventually they took legal action, I think in 1890, to stop them doing it. But the problem was that even that was too late, and by 1904 the arm was apparently barely navigable to Buckingham. In fact, by 1933 the last boat managed to get a load, I think, of chemicals about halfway down to Leckhampton, and in 1944 the canal company basically decided that the arm was leaking too much water, and so they dammed it, and they dammed it here. Now, this bridge may not look like it's the most astonishing thing you've ever seen, but it is, it really is. And that's because this bridge is where the dam was, and it has been dug out, and the bridge has been reinstated pretty much entirely by volunteers to reinstate this section of the Buckingham Arm. Now, as it stands, you're not allowed beyond it in a boat, and also as it stands, you can see the bridge does not bear much resemblance to what it used to look like. I believe the plan is to build up these embankments in stone on either side to make it look a little bit more like what it used to. But in any case, the bridge is back, and this section of the canal, more or less, is back. So it may have been officially abandoned in 1964, but it was practically abandoned by being dammed in 1944. And in fact, if you have a look down here, you can see that there are some stones that I assume used to be part of the bridge or part of a surrounding wall that have just been thoroughly abandoned and left there for many, many years. Now, I think that bridge was rebuilt in 2020, but I have a feeling that since it was quite pandemic-y at that point, that it hasn't really been used since. But look, there are boats that managed to get through it. These are boats belonging to, or leased to, the Buckingham Canal Society. Some hilarious jape there from a vandal. It is the Buckingham Canal Society, and this section of canal is pretty much ready to go. Unfortunately, time has not been kind to the rest of the canal, and whilst significant works have been carried out by the Buckingham Canal Society down various chunks of it, unfortunately, at various times main roads have been built across it, and in Stony Stratford they completely obliterated the line of the canal and built a housing estate on the line. So unfortunately there is no going back from there, and if they want to restore this canal all the way to Buckingham, then they're going to have to put in a pretty hefty diversion and dig what is effectively a brand new canal, I think for pretty much half of its length. The other problem is, at the Buckingham end you can get as far as Bourton Meadow, which is on the outskirts of Buckingham, but again life has moved on in the intervening, well, since Buckingham, 120 years, and there really is no digging it any further. Nevertheless, I mean, you might ask, well then why are people wanting to restore a canal which will never go to Buckingham, and more than half of it will have to be dug out as a new canal? And the answer, I think, is because it's there. I mean, you know, if you want a hobby, then volunteering is a brilliant thing to do. And quite a lot of this canal is here, so why not try and get as much of it as possible into a condition that it is then navigable. I'm just going to step round this big pile of mud. One of the things about this stretch of canal is that obviously the towpath has not been used as a towpath for an awfully long time, and they've done excellent work sort of restoring bits of it, but there's still quite a lot of mud going around. Now, at the moment this canal is basically at the level that it was. I'm not sure if it's been dredged yet, but not a great deal of work needs to be done to get it into a position where it could be used again. Unfortunately, this doesn't last for long, so I might shut up now and fast forward a bit until we get to the next interesting thing. And here is the next interesting thing, which is the site of the second bridge on the canal. And as you can see, there is no second bridge. So this is in the process of being reinstated. So it gives you some idea of what had to be done to bridge number 1. Now, this bridge wasn't dammed like the first bridge. That's dammed with 2 M's, not with an M and an N. But it was nevertheless clobbered and filled in so that a farmer could get from one side of the canal to the other. And they've been doing some great work. They have actually dammed it in order to be able to repair it. Here's the dam across the canal. But there's another one there as well, by the way. But they have put in a narrow, and that is going to be where the footings for the next new bridge, which will remove the need for this chunk of access from one field to another, and will mean that boats and farmers can live in peace and harmony. This Hitachi digger is currently sitting in the canal, but as you can see at this point we're slightly low on the water department. Beyond the dams it reverts to a state which anyone who enjoys, as I do, a bit of canal hunting will recognise, and that is a saucer-shaped ditch in the ground with a little bit of water and lots of reeds and vegetation. And there are chunks of canal across the country which look like this, having been abandoned at one time or another. Right, well, time we crack on to the next interesting bit, so I shall shut up again and we will crack out the jazz. Here's a slightly interesting thing. If you have a look beneath that tree on the opposite bank, you can see that the earth looks significantly darker than you might expect it to. And that's because it isn't the natural earth of the surrounding area. That is what's called puddling. Puddling is a type of clay, and when they made the canals, they lined the canals with puddling clay to stop them leaking. Now, puddling clay will only stop leaks if it is kept permanently wet. It's sort of like a sort of damp goo that can flow around and fill any holes and so on. And this whole section is going to need plenty of work to make it watertight and non-leaking again. But that is work that the Buckingham Canal Society are determined to carry out, for which I am very grateful. If you have a look here, you can see another very abandoned canal type site, that of bulrushes, which grow in shallow water. Like, I think they grow in any water, but anyway, they grow in shallow water, and they have colonised this area of canal. But you can see it's actually remarkably untouched from the day when they unceremoniously destroyed the bridge in 1944 and just dumped a whole bunch of earth in the canal to block it off. I'm told that the canal, as it went its way actually into Buckingham, by the time it closed, was pretty horrific, full of sewage and rubbish, fly tipping. It was an absolute eyesore. So I can totally understand why in the 1960s, when they thought that the canals would, they'd keep a few miles of them for historical purposes and just close the rest off, why they thought that the arm should be filled in and made as if it was never there. But it's a shame today, because as you can see, there is a lot that could be done about this. If you go to the other end of the canal in Buckingham, you'll find a section at Bourton Meadow that they have restored, and you'll also find the site of Bourton Lock. And the trouble with that is that somebody in the interim has bought the lockkeeper's cottage and built a garage on the lock. I've found a archive photo from the 1960s of Borton Lock, and it is, you know, just full of rubble and rubbish and broken gates and what have you. So it's not a big surprise, but they'll have to do something about that. I don't know what they're going to do. Blackmail the owner, put in a diversion, surreptitiously knock down the garage while he's not looking. I don't know, but we'll have to see. Interesting to see, by the way. I don't know if you've seen the shape of a canal before, but it's not as U-shaped as you might think. It's normally saucer-shaped or even V-shaped. Right, I'll shut up again and we'll have some more jazz. Okay, we'll give it a go anyway. This is the site of another bridge. I have a feeling the bridge is actually still there. It's just been buried under lots of earth. No doubt in due course they will dig it out and find out. I suspect we're going to find out where the hornet's nest either is or was. Caution, hornet's nest ahead. If you hear buzzing and screaming, you'll know I've found it. Many years after canals are abandoned, they end up looking like this. So the ditch has dried up entirely. Years of soil have sort of filled it in a bit, so it's not as deep or as wide as it once was, and grass has recolonised it. This is very common. And again, if you go wandering around and finding disused canals, and you know, do, because it's a good walk, it's good for you, and it's also quite good fun, then this will become a very familiar sight indeed to you. Now we're coming up on something up here. I don't know what it is. It looks like it might be a sluice. Obviously nowadays it'll be a sluice to sluice nothing out of nothing. Nevertheless, still some interesting built remains that are worth having a look at. So let's go and check it out. Yes, it is indeed a sluice. Long since disused, I think, but has the look of something that has had some recent attention. So in the days when this canal was working, look at that brickwork. That brickwork's had some attention as well. See, nice new pointing on that. So in the days when this canal was working, what that would have been would be a place where water could be let out of, slightly possibly into, but more probably out of the canal when it was too full into the surrounding fields, and therefore keep the traffic going. You'll find them sometimes in the oddest of places. Sometimes they survive when the canal, all other traces of the canal has died and lost and gone. You'll just find one sitting in the middle of a field somewhere. It's like that parts of Birmingham. Now, shutting up again until we get to our destination. Let's hear some jazz. Now then, here we are going to come across one of the many, many obstacles that canal restoration efforts face think you can probably hear it already. Canal comes along here, and oh dear, we have got ourselves a big main road. Just before we go and have a look at it, somebody has very kindly put up a board, and you need to go all the way through. It's going to have to be a brand new section all the way through here, and then from there through to about there or so we should be all right. Now then, here's the trouble. The canal ends and the road just slices straight through it at road level, at canal level rather, and as you can hear, it's quite a busy road. Well, if you're coming on this walk, by the way, if you go up there is a bridge over the road, but for the moment this is where we must stop. You can just see opposite me in the trees, or maybe you can't, I don't know, the remains of the canal beginning again, but no doubt there will be some sort of effort of, diversions, locks, bridges, something like that. I think it's planned to go down there and go over or under the road at some point and carry on. In any case, that was a look at the Buckingham Canal. I hope you enjoyed it, and I shall see you next time. Goodbye.